Hello everyone, I'm your captain and welcome to another expedition here on Deep Dive. What sight is more beautiful or serene than a pregnant mother or a newborn baby? We've been taught to see pregnancy as a quiet miracle, a process of selfless giving, a sacred union between mother and child. This picture is beautiful, but it's only half the truth. What if I told you that the most intimate and profound human connection begins not with a union, but with a declaration of war? By the end of this video, you will understand why the creation of a new human. Life is less like a miracle and more like a brilliant 9-month siege. And knowing this truth will change the way you look at the concept of life itself forever. To begin this journey, we must challenge a belief we all grew up with, the epic story of the sperm race. The image in our minds is an Olympic event. Millions of sperm, like marathon runners, race towards a single finish line. And the fastest, strongest, luckiest one wins the gold medal, the egg. It's a great story, but scientifically, it's almost entirely wrong. The truth is far stranger and more amazing. This isn't a race, it's a brutal entrance exam. From the moment millions of sperm begin their journey, they enter a hostile land. The female reproductive tract is an active, selective environment. The first barrier, the cervical mucus, acts as an intelligent filter, eliminating the weaker ones and allowing the stronger ones to pass. But that's the easy part. Those who make it through are met by the security patrols of the mother's immune system. Immune cells, which identify and destroy any foreign invader, see the sperm as a threat and ruthlessly attack them. Of the millions of travelers who began this journey, perhaps only a few dozen will ever reach the vicinity of the egg. But here, the story's biggest surprise unfolds. The egg is not a passive prize at the finish line. It is an active gatekeeper that chooses the winner. By releasing chemical signals, the egg guides sperm that are genetically more compatible with the mother's immune system towards itself. It's an incredibly precise lock and key system. It's not enough to get to the door, you have to have the right key. And even that isn't the whole story. Breaching the egg's defensive wall requires teamwork. The first hundreds of sperm to arrive sacrifice themselves. By releasing their enzymes, they weaken the egg's protective layer, just like a demolition team preparing a fortress wall for one person to enter. In the end, only a single sperm, chosen by the egg itself, is granted entry. This brief moment of cooperation is the last peace treaty before an all-out war begins. A 9-month war between the newly formed embryo and its host. But why? Why is the system designed to be so brutal from the very beginning? The answer takes us deep into our own genes. When the sperm and egg combine, the resulting embryo isn't a single, unified entity. It's like an emissary with two conflicting sets of orders. The genes inherited from the father have one goal: rapid, aggressive growth. They encourage the embryo to take the maximum possible resources from the mother, even at the cost of her own health. In contrast, the mother's genes advise caution and balance. The mother's strategy is to conserve resources for herself and for potential future pregnancies. This conflict of interest ignites a genetic civil war in the womb. This war is waged at the molecular level through a process called genomic imprinting. Certain genes are stamped or imprinted based on whether they came from the father or the mother, causing them to be turned on or off. A classic example is the IGF-2 gene. The father's version of this gene acts like an accelerator pedal, telling the embryo, grow more, demand more resources. In opposition, the mother's gene, called IGF-2R, acts like a brake, trying to control these demands. This constant struggle, like a molecular tug-of-war, maintains the balance of the embryo's growth. If this balance is disturbed, disaster strikes. If the father's gene is too strong, the embryo grows too large, endangering the mother's health. If the mother's gene is dominant, the embryo doesn't get enough nourishment and remains weak. This genetic war quickly escalates into a physical battle. When the days-old embryo arrives in the uterus, it isn't met with a warm, soft cradle. It's met with a fortified, heavily defended fortress. The uterine wall, or endometrium, has evolved to be incredibly resistant to penetration. It's a brutal job interview. The embryo must prove through its own strength and health that it is worthy of the massive 9-month investment. And to prove its worth, the embryo doesn't wait for an invitation. It acts like a skilled invader. The embryo deploys infiltration units, tiny bubbles full of genetic material that function like a human virus. These bubbles invade the cells of the uterine wall and brainwash them into helping the embryo attach. rather than rejecting it. Once the first foothold is secured, the main assault begins. A part of the embryo's cells called trophoblasts, which will later form the placenta, act like a tiny, violent parasitic octopus. With their many arms, they begin to dig into the uterine tissue. They digest their way through, reaching the mother's arteries, puncturing them, and remodeling their structure to divert a high-pressure, uninterrupted flow of blood directly to themselves. This invasion is so profound and complete that it changes the mother forever. The embryo's cells are so invasive that they often find their way into the mother's bloodstream, migrating to her other organs like the liver, lungs, and even the brain, where they can remain for the rest of her life. Yes, motherhood turns a woman into a genetic chimera, a being who carries the cells of another human inside her own body for a lifetime. This process is incredibly risky. About half of all human pregnancies fail at this implantation stage. If the embryo is not strong enough and cannot send the right hormonal signals, the mother's body defaults to destroying the entire battlefield. The monthly menstrual cycle is, in fact, an auto-destruct mechanism that sheds the entire uterine wall and any weak embryos that we're attempting to implant, preparing the ground for a new battle. Now, hold on for a second. A huge question arises here. If the embryo is so invasive and genetically a foreign entity, why doesn't the mother's immune system reject it like a transplanted organ? The embryo carries half of the father's genes and is not considered self by the mother's body. How does this intruder survive for 9 months? The answer is one of the most brilliant strategies in the biological world. A masterpiece of molecular espionage. The embryo uses an invisibility cloak. The cells of the placenta cover their surface with a molecule called phosphocholine. This molecule hides them from the mother's immune cells. But here's the astonishing part. Do you know where else this exact molecule is found in nature? On parasitic worms. Parasitic worms use the exact same molecule to hide from their host's immune system. The fact that the human placenta and a parasite independently evolve the same molecular trick for survival shows just how deep and real the parasite analogy for the embryo is. Furthermore, the mother's immune system isn't completely suppressed. Instead, a ceasefire zone is created at the interface of the placenta and the uterus. The fetal cells display special molecules called HLA-G on their surface. These molecules act like a diplomatic passport. When the mother's warrior immune cells arrive, they see this passport and receive the command, "Do not attack." An army of special immune cells called regulatory T cells, or TREGs, is also stationed in this area to suppress any aggressive reactions. It's a fragile piece that can collapse with the slightest mistake, leading to miscarriage. So far on our journey, we've witnessed an all-out war, a brutal entrance exam, a genetic civil war, a violent physical invasion, and a complex system of molecular espionage. All of this makes human pregnancy and childbirth uniquely dangerous. But the main question is, why? Why has our creation process evolved to be so risky and costly? Why is this war in humans so much more intense and dangerous than in most other mammals? The traditional answer has been the obstetric dilemma, a hypothesis that says our evolution was pulled in two opposite directions: walking on 2 feet, which requires a narrower pelvis, and having large brains, which require larger heads. This anatomical mismatch makes childbirth difficult and dangerous. This explanation is correct, but it's not complete. There is a missing piece in this puzzle. A surprising truth that changes the entire story. This is the turning point of our story. The real reason this internal war is so intense in our species isn't related to our greatest weakness, but to our greatest strength, our social nature, and our capacity for cooperation. In most animal species, a newborn's survival depends 100% on its mother's survival. If the mother dies during or after birth, the newborn also dies. Therefore, natural selection has always favored strategies that prioritize the mother's health. But humans are different. We evolved cooperative care, or alloparenting. In human societies, if a mother dies, the father, grandmother, aunt, or other members of the group can care for the newborn and increase its chances of survival. This social safety net has had an unexpected evolutionary consequence. This system has loosened the selective pressures to protect the mother at all costs. As a result, the paternal genes in the embryo have been allowed to evolve more. Aggressive and riskier strategies for extracting resources from the mother. Because even if these strategies end up costing the mother her life, the newborn's chance of survival, thanks to the community support, is not zero. Our greatest strength, our ability to cooperate, to love, and to form societies, is the very thing that has turned this internal war in the womb into a life-or-death battle. We became social, and in doing so, we turned our own creation process into an incredibly dangerous test. This is the heavy price we paid for our large brains and complex societies, a price that every mother still pays. So that serene and sacred image of mother and child is not a lie. It is the final outcome of this war. It is the peace treaty signed after a beautiful, intelligent, and brutal 9-month battle. Many of the most dangerous complications of pregnancy, like preeclampsia or high blood pressure, are in fact casualties of this war. Moments when the diplomatic negotiations between mother and fetus break down and the conflict escalates. In the end, this incredible paradox lies at the heart of our existence. This hidden war, this struggle for survival, is the very process that shapes our greatest asset, our complex brain. And at the same time, it is the very thing that makes our birth a perilous experience. Our evolutionary victory was won on this ancient battlefield. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive. We love you all. If you found this journey into the depths of human biology interesting, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support is the greatest encouragement for us to embark on more expeditions together. And now I ask you, which part of this hidden biological war surprised you the most? Write your answer in the comments. Perhaps the next time you look at a newborn baby, you'll remember that you're looking at a skilled survivor of a 9-month war. A war whose ultimate victor is life itself.